Hello, and today we are celebrating Pentecost, the day that the Holy Spirit was given to the apostles and the day that the church was born. So today is the church's birthday, and that Holy Spirit is given to us as well. And it said on the day of Pentecost that the disciples and the apostles were all gathered together in a room, and in that room they heard the roar of a rushing wind, which is appropriate because we're getting a bit of a rushing wind right at the moment. And they talk about the Holy Spirit as coming them and seeing fire pour down them. Fire. Tongues of fire on each of the disciples. Every one of the apostles had a tongue of fire rest upon his head. Each one. Tongues of fire. Which had to be a pretty amazing experience. Imagine that. Tongue of fire that rested on each one of their heads. The Holy Spirit came to them. Now I looked up and I was looking for a drawing of Peter. Well, here's what I got. Now, I'm not really sure that that's a real accurate representation of what Peter might have looked like, but Peter was one of the disciples. He was one of the apostles who was present in that room who had that fire rest on him. And so everybody else gathered there would have seen this tongue of fire resting on Peter. They would have seen this fire on Peter. And they would have seen that burning on him as it was on all the other apostles. And that fire would have been burning because the Holy Spirit was poured out onto him. But a funny thing happened. Do you think that all day when Peter was walking around that he had this like big ball of fire sticking out of his head? That probably wouldn't be very comfortable. I imagine that would give you a bit of a headache after a while and maybe get a little singeing that would go on there. So that fire didn't stay sitting on his head. And yet the Holy Spirit was still with him. So that fire burned on Peter. And I might be out of your frame there for a moment, but that fire burned, but it wasn't on his head anymore, but it was in his heart. It was in him. The Holy Spirit came and didn't just sit on top of the apostles and just stay in that room and stay as a fire, but God entered into the lives of his apostles, of his children. And the Holy Spirit lives in Peter, and the Holy Spirit is poured out onto us. God comes to us in the Holy Spirit and lives in us and burns in us. Doesn't set us on fire, not literally, but burns within us that we might have faith, that we might go out and proclaim the mighty acts of God. The Holy Spirit gives us the power to do the work that God has called us to do and to be the church of Jesus Christ.